We live in a world that is very suspicious. We're always told that there's more going on than we're supposed to know. Mysterious forces are manipulating society from somewhere for reasons that are almost always nefarious. Someone or something must be in control. Given the complexity of life today, it's easy to fall into these rabbit holes. Humans naturally look for patterns in their existence. If we see something, we instinctively look for connections and causes. We want an explanation for all the chaos and the random occurrences. But there's no such thing. Complexity leads to a crisis of control. We want to be in control of our lives and not be led somewhere against our will. If we're feeling powerless and anxious and confused, we're more likely to seek out any explanation for why things are the way they are. They reduce complexity to simplicity. There's a growing distrust in institutions, government, religion, corporations, evil cabals of billionaires. They gotta be out to get us, right? Conspiracy theories give us a sense of comfort, of belonging, of security, and the idea that we possess some secret knowledge of which the rest of the sheeple are blissfully unaware. It's not your imagination either. There are more conspiracy theories than ever. The internet has given voice to thousands of them, allowing these ideas to spread further and more quickly. The world of music is not immune to any of this either. Conspiratorial thinking is everywhere, even in places where you might not expect to find it. I'm Alan Cross, and this is episode 69 of Uncharted: Crime and Mayhem in the Music Industry. And this is part 2 of Music's Great Conspiracies. Welcome to part 2 of a look at the music world's greatest conspiracies. And I hope you're ready for this because some of them are pretty wild. Let's begin with those who believe that big stars have faked their deaths. And the first person on this list is Jim Morrison, who died of a heart attack in a bathtub in Paris. He's buried at Père Lachaise Cemetery, which has become something of a shrine for music fans. Hey, even I've been there. But is Jim really in that grave? Some people believe not. They say Jim faked his death on that day in 1971. Why go through all this trouble? Conspiracists believe that Jim pulled a vanishing act to escape the burden of being a rock star. They don't want to consider Morrison's drug habits, maybe he overdosed, declining health, he had heart issues, or even the possibility of suicide. Instead, they're convinced that his mojo has risen, and that as of 2025, Jim Morrison was alive and well, living quietly in Syracuse, New York. Here's their proof. First, Jim Morrison's death was not reported for 6 days. There was no autopsy. And why was there a closed casket funeral? I know, pretty flimsy, but there's more. In a 2025 documentary called Before the End by filmmaker Jeff Flynn, a maintenance worker named Frank was found in Syracuse, New York. He allegedly looked a lot like Jim. He had a scar on his nose where Jim once had a mole. Is the scar perhaps the result of having that mole removed? And get this, Frank was also a poet. Doors drummer John Densmore actually met Frank and wondered aloud if Frank was actually Jim in hiding. 2 of Jim's ex-girlfriends were shown Frank's picture, and they both burst into tears. Frank has been interviewed, but all his answers were cagey and vague. He really doesn't help with the theory one way or the other, so believe what you will, I guess. An even more popular conspiracy is that Elvis faked his own death. He did not die in his bathroom at Graceland on August 16, 1977. Even with all the eyewitness accounts at Graceland and the hospital and the autopsy report and the investigation into his death, and after all the pomp and circumstance of his open casket funeral and burial, there are still those who won't accept that. The Elvis is alive theories are all based on mysterious sightings. People say that they've actually run into the king over the decades. The earliest case seems to be the appearance of a man named John Burris at Memphis International Airport on August 17, 1977, the day after Elvis died. He was seen boarding a flight to, it is said, Buenos Aires. Now, that would have been a neat trick given that there were no flights between Memphis and Argentina in 1977. In 1978, a novel called Orion was published by Gail Brewer Giorgio. The plot and the characters are based largely on the life of Elvis. But at the end, the main character fakes his own death. At the same time, Sun Records, Elvis's original record label, released an album by a masked singer named, guessed it, Orion. Orion sounded a lot like Elvis, too. A coincidence that the novel and the album were released at the same time? I think not. But no one wanted to know that Orion's real name was Jimmy Ellis. It later came out that Jimmy and Gail Brewer Giorgio knew each other and worked together. In 1979, Geraldo Rivera hosted a two-part TV special called The Elvis Cover-Up. The focus was on Elvis's drug issues and his relationship with the infamous Dr. Nick. There was nothing about a fake death in the show, but because many people misinterpreted the title, you can see how things could go awry. The theories continued through the early 1980s, largely because of a recording that was passed from Elvis fan to Elvis fan. This tape featured an interview of a man saying that he was, in fact, Elvis. He was traveling internationally, staying away from the U.S., and for added protection, he'd grown a beard. The same guy released an album entitled Do You Know Who I Am? And the name he used for this album was Silval Nora, which is Elvis Aaron, spelled backwards. Well, no, the guy's name was David Darlock. The tapes were the project of the Eternally Elvis Fan Club, which, well, we think they were working on some kind of fictional production. The biggest boost to the Elvis Lives story came in 1987. You probably heard this one. Louise Welling stopped in for a Whopper at a Burger King in Kalamazoo, Michigan. She spotted Elvis. This story got picked up by the media and blew up internationally. It also brought the whole Orion story back into the spotlight. Larry King, Oprah, Geraldo, they all pursued the story. And this opened the floodgates. There were books like Is Elvis Alive?, a reissue of the novel Orion, and a book called Memphis Mystery by Bill Smith, a record producer, who even had a guy phone into a radio show pretending to be Elvis. The whole thing was released on a cassette called Elvis Lives. Then, in late 1988, this came out. It's a song called Spelling on the Stone. The title is a reference to Elvis's tombstone, which spells his middle name Aaron, A-R-O-N, with two A's instead of one. And there is the smoking gun, apparently.
Check the spelling on the stone.
Well, good try. This is actually an unknown Elvis impersonator hired by LS Records to capitalize on the Elvis is Alive craze of the late 1980s. Still, country stations picked up the song, which resulted in even more Elvis sightings. By this time, the supermarket tabloids were all over this, especially the Weekly World News, which became the unofficial Elvis tracker of record. And it continued. In 1989, there was another Geraldo Rivera TV special entitled Wanted, Elvis Dead or Alive. There were TV specials in 1991 and 1992 hosted by Bill Bixby called The Elvis Files and The Elvis Conspiracy. The second doc referred to a 1977 FBI plot called Operation Fountain Pen that linked Elvis to a criminal organization called the Fraternity. In recently unclassified documents, Elvis had gone into hiding to work as a secret FBI agent. The TV specials and books continued through the 1990s. Was that him as an extra in Home Alone in 1990? Another similar claim said that the real Elvis can be seen as an extra in the 1998 movie Finding Graceland. Someone said that they saw Elvis at Legoland in California. The whole issue then started to fade away, largely because Elvis fans had aged and fewer people were interested. Besides, the internet presented many other more interesting and dangerous conspiracies. The last real developments in the Elvis Lives saga came in 2015 when, first, a homeless man in San Diego was identified as the real Elvis, and then one of the groundskeepers at Graceland was identified as the real Elvis. And shortly after that, preacher Bob Joyce was identified as the real Elvis. All of this had been helped along by songs that parody the whole thing. Elvis is Everywhere by Skid Roper and Mojo Nixon, Elvis is Dead from the Forgotten Rebels, Elvis is Dead by Living Colour, and then there are references in the movies, as we saw in the first Men in Black. So, is Elvis alive? No. But not everyone believes that. And not everyone believes that Tupac Shakur died in a Las Vegas hospital as the result of a drive-by shooting in 1994. Let's go through that. The official story is that Pac passed away on September 13, 1993 in a Las Vegas hospital, 6 days after he was shot. There was a report from the coroner, an autopsy, a police investigation, and his mother spread his ashes. But some Pac fans don't believe this. They think he survived the assassination and escaped to Cuba, where he lives under a fake name. The proof? More sightings. And lyrics in his original recordings that apparently contain predictions and clues. For example, in the song Love Goes On, he references his own funeral. 2 days after he died, the album All Eyes on Me was released, and it contained a song called I Ain't Mad at Ya. The video shows him being shot after leaving a fight, and that's close to what happened on September the 6th, 1994, because he was shot shortly after leaving a Mike Tyson fight. All right, what about all those posthumous releases? He must be still alive. Meanwhile, Suge Knight, the head of Death Row Records, who is serving a 28-year prison sentence for voluntary manslaughter, says, Tupac? You never know. Add in the conspiracy theories linking P. Diddy to the deaths of both Tupac Shakur and Notorious B.I.G., and you have plenty of people looking for answers to a question that really doesn't exist. Here's one more. Michael Jackson. He definitely died on June 25, 2009 from acute propofol and benzo intoxication. There was a 5-hour autopsy, a coroner's report, and volumes of verified medical details. His doctor, Conrad Murray, was convicted of involuntary manslaughter. 2 things have fueled the Michael is alive theory. First, in 2009, a German broadcaster released a video showing Jackson getting out of a coroner's van. And people took this as proof that he was still alive. But no, this was actually an experiment to prove how fast disinformation can travel. The other involves the myriads of Michael Jackson imposters that have popped up all over the world. Every single one of those sightings has been debunked, but like all other similar theories, there are true believers. Coming up, conspiracy theories about UFOs with a music connection. You can't broach the topic of conspiracy theories and cover-ups without bringing in the subject of UFOs and unidentified aerial phenomena. And we're going to begin with Reg Presley. You may remember him from the Troggs, with a big hit with Wild Thing in 1965. Wait, Presley? He was very, very deeply concerned about UFOs and crop circles. Using royalties from Trogg songs, which have been substantial, he sunk a lot of money into his research into aliens and alien cover-ups. This all started when he discovered a crop circle on an English farm in 1990. He even had a book entitled Wild Things They Don't Tell Us, and claimed to have encountered no fewer than 14 UFOs in his life. In 1994, Reg launched his own TV show on a local channel. The Reg Presley UFO Show went deep into the latest U2 sightings and news, crop circles, alien autopsies, alien abductions, government cover-ups, animal mutilations, lost civilizations, and alchemy. He also warned that the church, and this is a quote, does not want us to know what 666 really means. This cable access show brought in 10,000 viewers on a regular basis, which is pretty darn good. Here's a quote about one of his encounters. I filmed a UFO crossing the valley. It was a light, the same brightness as a star, but it was going down in brightness, then up. All of a sudden, it came up 5 times brighter and then changed to orange. It remained stationary there, no noise whatsoever. I don't know what it was. The next day, there was a crop formation just where this thing had stopped, a triangle shape with circles on the corner. That footage was screened at various UFO conferences. Reg was a real eccentric beyond this. He patented a fog warning system. He developed a technology that he said would reclaim deserts. And in the last years of his life, he became fascinated by ingesting white powdered gold, saying that the ancient Egyptians did it for some reason. He even tried to manufacture this special thing by himself using an old iron foundry. Before he died in 2013, he spent many, many, many nights in cornfields in the English countryside, awaiting the appearance of crop circle-making extraterrestrials. And today, if you go to a pub called the Barge Inn in Wiltshire, there's a memorial mural dedicated to the research Reg did. He would often drop in for a pint before setting out into the cornfields. Now, as much as Reg wanted to believe, Tom DeLonge of Blink-182 has taken things even further. He is among the most committed and most invested UFO researchers in the world. Tom has been into alien conspiracies since junior high. He was a difficult, rebellious kid who got into a lot of trouble. And the last thing he wanted was, when he grew up, was to be stuck in a boring 9-to-5 job. And then he saw Star Wars and Close Encounters, and that got him thinking about what might be out there. He started reading and researching as much as he could. UFOs were great, but he also got into theories of paranormal activity. When Blink-182 came together and he started making some serious money, in 1996, his first royalty check went to buying a personal computer, which he immediately put to work looking for more information on aliens. Tom spent long hours on the Blink tour bus looking out the window, hoping to spot something in the sky. He still talks about a night in the desert where he claims to have seen unexplained objects zipping and zigzagging across the stars. Sometimes he'd organize a Bigfoot search party. Tom's library of research material grew, dozens, then hundreds of books and videotapes. Amongst his favorites featured military and government whistleblower reports. His obsession got so great that it got in the way of being in Blink-182. Mark Hoppus and Travis Barker got very tired of Tom and his theories and conspiracies. In 2011, he founded Strange Times, a website dedicated to the topic. He wrote a children's book called The Lonely Astronaut on Christmas Eve. While separated from the band, he co-wrote several novels and non-fiction books about secret machines. That led to a History Channel series called Unidentified: Inside America's UFO Investigation. During his time away from the band, he founded the To the Stars Academy of Arts and Sciences, a company with both an entertainment division and another seriously devoted to aerospace, unidentified aerial phenomena, and technological research into theories like zero-point energy as a method of propulsion. To the Stars is staffed with academics, engineers, NASA scientists, ex-government officials, and at least one former member of the CIA. The Academy has been relentless in demanding government institutions be more transparent when it comes to what they know. One of the company's initiative is the acquisition and data analysis of materials. This is a research project which is dedicated to examining alleged exotic alien materials recovered from actual UFOs, and they say that they've got some. And in October 2023, a movie called Monsters of California was released. This was Tom's full-length feature directorial debut about a couple of kids who get sucked into a situation involving a missing father, some paranormal activities, and the military. These days, Tom is pretty excited given that the U.S. government and NASA have acknowledged that UAPs exist and that they don't know what they are. Tom took to wearing a t-shirt for Blink shows that read, "Tom was right." And here's a quote. "As a hobby, all I ever do is read books and study material on UFOs and government conspiracies. So I wrote a song about a guy talking about aliens as though he's had a weird experience, but nobody believes him. They think he's full of crap. But he's directing his angst towards the government because the government knows there's something going on." I think it's just a cool song coming from that point of view. He's speaking of a Blink-182 track entitled "Aliens Exist" from the Enema of the State album. Tom DeLonge and Reg Presley are far from the only musicians who believe that there's a conspiracy to deny the existence of extraterrestrial life. Elvis Presley, yep, him again, told his secret to his hairstylist. When he was 8 years old, he shared telepathic visions with aliens, and one of them was a future Elvis wearing a white jumpsuit. Jimi Hendrix became obsessed after he and his brother spotted a UFO. This explains some of the spacey references in his songs. Mick Jagger and Keith Richards. Mick once talked about a cigar-shaped thing he spotted while camping in 1968, and a story about him putting a UFO detector in his home that picks up their characteristic high-frequency electromagnetic output. Meanwhile, Keith believed that one of his country houses was an actual landing site for UFOs. In the early 1970s, from his Ziggy Stardust period to when he starred as an alien in the movie The Man Who Fell to Earth, David Bowie, who admittedly was really coked out at the time, toured with a telescope so he could go to the top of whatever hotel he was staying in to scan the skies for a mothership he believed was coming to fetch him. He did a lot of coke. In 1974, he wrote for an English UFO magazine, claiming that he had an observatory which netted 6 or 7 UFO sightings a night. John Lennon believed he saw a UFO from his apartment in the Dakota in New York City. He wrote about it in the liner notes to his 1974 album Walls and Bridges. Sammy Hagar honestly believes that when he saw a UFO somewhere in California, it involved an encounter where, in his words, aliens infiltrated his mind and communicated with him telepathically. Happy Mondays singer Shawn Ryder is all in when it comes to UFOs. Like Tom DeLonge, he's been involved in a TV series on the subject, which is called Shawn Ryder on UFOs. Katy Perry believes she views the world through a spiritual lens, which has somehow connected her to aliens. And Robbie Williams says that he's been visited by aliens several times, and all he has to do is play his song Arizona, and boom, there they are. Then there's Matt Bellamy of Muse. He thinks that he was once abducted driving home from a recording session. He followed a bright light into the woods, and the next thing he knew, he woke up at his home in bed. Also on this list, Stevie Nicks, Ace Frehley of Kiss, Dave Davies of the Kinks, Frank Black of the Pixies, Lemmy of Motorhead, Kendrick Lamar, Morrissey, Post Malone, and Machine Gun Kelly. If there's a UFO conspiracy cover-up, all of these musicians want to know the truth. All right, let's try this. What about real musicians replaced by imposters? Well, there are more of those conspiracies than you realize. Every once in a while, somebody comes up with a theory that a popular musician isn't who we think they are. They're an imposter, someone who replaced the real musician because, they have their reasons. Phil Ochs was an American singer in the 60s and 70s known for his protest songs. He was even called a singing journalist, but when he got to his 30s, something started to go wrong. He became convinced that the U.S. government was out to get him. In mid-1975, he even legally changed his name to John Butler Train. We'll get back to that. Because he was a protest singer and agitator, he, like many other artists of the day, were actually being surveilled by the FBI and the CIA. Both organizations actually had files on him, more than 500 pages of dossier material, something that Ochs later discovered. Now, this is pretty bizarre, so try and follow me. Ochs believed with his heart and soul that a man named Train, remember he changed his name to John Butler Train, was a government agent of some sort. And this Train killed him, and Ochs was now Train, and Train was living in Ochs' place. And someone was also out to kill him, Train, so he always carried a hammer and a knife. And when those weren't available, a lead pipe was fine. At times, he ranted to friends about how he wanted to be managed by Colonel Tom Parker, Elvis's manager. And if Colonel Tom wasn't available, then he wanted Colonel Sanders to be his manager. And yes, we are talking about the KFC guy. Now, this wasn't a conspiracy at all, but a medical condition called alter ego delusion. There's Cotard syndrome, a real-life psychiatric disorder where a person believes that they are dead. And then there's Capgras syndrome, where a person believes that there's someone else, and Ochs seemed to have symptoms of both disorders. Plus, he was bipolar and drank very heavily. He got into fights in bars and often lived on the streets, and after attempts at controlling his demons with medication, he committed suicide by hanging in his sister's apartment in April 1976. So there was no conspiracy here except in the mind of Phil Ochs. There's a recurring theory amongst conspiratorial types that pop stars are routinely replaced and perhaps even cloned without the public's knowledge. These lookalikes keep the artist's career going, and we're not supposed to notice a thing. You may have heard about the Avril Lavigne replacement theory. This has been floating around the internet since 2011 after a blog out of Brazil called Avril est morta, that translates as Avril is dead, posited the following, a story that may stretch back to 2005. And here we go. Avril, it is said, had some kind of breakdown in 2003, shortly after she released her debut album, Let It Go. The pressure of success and the death of her grandfather resulted in a deep, incurable depression, and this breakdown led to suicide. But because the album was so successful, the real Avril needed to be replaced by a body double to keep the money flowing in. And this imposter even had a name, Melissa Vandella. Her initial job had been to distract the paparazzi who had begun to follow Avril everywhere. But when the real Avril died, Melissa was asked to step up. She was tutored on how to sing, talk, and move like the real Avril. It worked, and Melissa kept Avril's career going with great success, meaning that the money kept flowing to her management company and record label. Okay, so what's the evidence for this? Moles, as in those things that grow in your skin. Conspiracists noted that certain moles appeared and disappeared on Avril over the years. There was a purported photo shoot featuring the name Melissa that was written on her hand. This theory really blew up with researchers who called themselves Avril Rangers. They collaborated and shared information, and they found subliminal messages and songs that told the truth. There was something about the artwork for her second album, Under My Skin, that seemed off. Others claim to have uncovered a story that Melissa was racked by guilt over this whole charade. The Avril is dead theory got even bigger in 2015 when BuzzFeed amplified it with a post. And it didn't matter that the author of the post labeled everything as a hoax and a conspiracy. Then there was another rumor. The real Avril had died in a snowboarding accident on the slopes of Whistler, BC. In the spring of 2017, a tweet showed up, leading to a thread about Avril's 2003 death. It got over 250,000 retweets. The moles and skin changes again were brought up. Her fashion choices had changed. Suspicious. Her handwriting had changed. That much of her music after 2003 consisted of vocal tracks that she had left behind before she died. Now, none of this is true, of course. Avril has tried many times to debunk things with interviews on TV, radio, and online all over the world. She talked about things in 2014, 2017, 2018, 2019, and again in 2022. Here's an excerpt from Glamour magazine. So it's funny because everyone says I look the same, but then there's that. That doesn't make any sense. Also, how random. When people bring it up, and it's been brought up to me like for years, that there's this conspiracy theory that I'm not me or something. I'm a clone? How does something like that get so, I don't know, it's just the weirdest rumor. And just so we can put an end to all this, the creator of the original post from Brazil, Avril S. Morta, has apologized for starting the whole thing. Avril Lavigne is alive and doing just fine. But what about Eminem? Two theories state that he died sometime in 2006. So let's pick them apart. The first is the clone theory. In this telling, Eminem was replaced by a clone created by the mysterious Illuminati that somehow controls the music industry. Okay, quick sidebar about that. There are those who believe that a branch of the Illuminati, the secret society of elites that oversee all activity on Earth, has a music industry franchise run by Jay-Z, Beyonce, Rihanna, Lady Gaga, Kanye West, and others. They manipulate us through, well, I'm not sure. Anyway, their symbols are everywhere. The all-seeing eye, hexagrams, secret hand gestures. They control the recording industry. They control music videos, award shows, the halftime performance at the Super Bowl. And it's all about, apparently, shepherding us into a new world order. They have extraordinary powers, like the ability to clone certain artists like Eminem. And they did it in 2006, when Eminem disappeared from public view for a while. Now, the truth was that he was cleaning up after a drug overdose, but never mind. Conspiracists point to alleged changes in Eminem's appearance, an alteration in his style of rapping, and his general demeanor in public and interviews. This was pushed by Tom MacDonald, who released a song called Cloned Rappers, which basically outlined the entire plot. The second theory is similar to what we saw with Avril Lavigne. Eminem, Marshall Mathers, died and was replaced by a body double named Ryan Shepherd, who went by the name Partial Mathers. Now, Ryan Shepherd was a real person. In the early 2000s, he worked with Eminem as a decoy and stunt double, luring fans and the paps away. We also saw him appear as a superhero clone, big clue, in the video for Purple Pills by rapper D12. And when the real Eminem died, Ryan just stepped into his shoes. Again, none of this is true. Eminem is different following his drug issues. He lost some weight, he's aged normally, and as part of that, his voice changed. And because he's a perfectionist when it comes to his rhymes and flows, he's always looking to change things up. Oh, and one final thing. Ryan Shepherd died on January 31st, 2013 at the age of 40. He was hit by a truck while he was crossing the street in Kennewick, Washington. It was not a hit and run, the driver was not impaired, and the driver remained on the scene, so nothing to see here. But Eminem? Still alive. So we're done, right? Well, no, we need more if we're going to do this right. Meanwhile, you can catch up on all episodes of Uncharted by downloading them from your favorite podcast platform. They're all free for the taking. If you have any questions or comments about anything you hear on the podcast, email me at alan@alancross.ca. We can meet up on all the social media sites, along with my website, ajournalofmusicalthings.com, which is updated every day with music news and recommendations. It also comes with a free daily newsletter filled with music news, opinion, and music recommendations. And there's my other podcast, The Ongoing History of New Music, which deals with rock music and alternative music through the decades. And there are hundreds, and I mean this, hundreds and hundreds of episodes that you can enjoy all for free. See you next time for even more stories of conspiracies as we investigate crime and mayhem in the music industry. Episodes arrive every 2 weeks. Technical productions by Rob Johnston. I'm Alan Cross.